I'm Brooklyn and I'm 23 years old with a 4-month-old baby. I never imagined I'd be a single mother at this age, but here I am, staying at my cousin's place, trying to figure out my next steps. This wasn't my plan. I wanted to return home to my parents after my breakup, where I thought I'd feel safe. But they didn't have room for me, not with a baby. They didn't say it outright, but I understood their meaning. I pretended everything was fine, telling them I'd sort it out, and I guess I did. Kendrick, my cousin, offered to let me stay with him. He's 23 and has his own place, a 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor. It's not large, but it's sufficient for now. I didn't have many other choices, so I packed my things and moved in. I should feel grateful. He didn't make it awkward or uncomfortable. He just told me I could stay as long as I needed. And he's great with my baby, which helps more than I care to admit. But the truth is, I feel like I'm carrying a secret I can't escape. Kendrick isn't just my cousin. 4 years ago, we went to France for a family vacation, and that trip changed everything. I still remember arriving at the hotel, unpacking, and heading out to explore. It was beautiful, narrow streets, colourful markets, and little cafes tucked into corners. I should have been focused on all of that, but instead I kept noticing how girls looked at Kendrick. He's always been attractive, and I hated how much I noticed it. It was worse seeing how other girls noticed too, wearing tiny shorts and tank tops, giggling and flipping their hair, hoping he'd look their way. Sometimes he did, and I hated it. I hated how it made me feel invisible. I don't think I even realized what I was doing at first. I started dressing differently, short skirts, low-cut tops. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I just wanted to feel confident, but deep down, I wanted him to look at me the way he looked at them. When he didn't, it made me try harder. One night, everything came to a head. We were at the hotel bar. I'd had a few too many drinks. I saw 2 older women talking to him, touching his arm, laughing too loudly. I felt something snap. Some guy at the bar was buying me drinks, but I couldn't focus on him. All I could think about was Kendrick. So I walked over and pulled him away from those women. I don't even remember exactly what I said, just that I was angry that he wasn't paying attention to me. He said I looked good. That's all it took. One compliment, and suddenly everything shifted. After that, things happened quickly. We went back to my room, I changed into pajamas, and before I could think too much about it, he kissed me. I didn't stop him. I didn't even try. We slept together twice. When the trip ended, we acted like nothing had happened. Back home, there were moments at family parties, in his house when no one else was around, where it felt like it might happen again, but it didn't. I buried it, moved on, dated other people, and now I have a baby with a man who left the minute things got tough. Somehow I'm right back here in Kendrick's apartment, sleeping in his spare room, pretending everything is fine, but it's not. I still feel that tension between us, and it scares me. I keep telling myself it's temporary, that I just need to get back on my feet, save some money, and move out. But every time I catch him looking at me or see him holding my baby, I wonder if I'm lying to myself. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying the story so far. It helps more than you know, and there's plenty more to come. Now let's get back to it. The summer I turned 19, my family decided to take a trip to France. It was supposed to be one of those perfect vacations, city tours, beaches, and endless sightseeing. I didn't expect it to change my life the way it did. I remember stepping off the plane, already exhausted, and seeing Kendrick waiting at baggage claim. He looked different, older, more confident. His hair was shorter than before, and he'd filled out in ways I hadn't noticed until that moment. Girls noticed too. It started almost immediately at the hotel lobby. A group of girls in short skirts kept glancing his way. On the streets, women stared as we walked by. I don't know why it bothered me so much. I told myself it was just protective cousin stuff, but that wasn't true. I hated how much attention he got and how invisible it made me feel. By the 3rd day, I was done pretending it didn't bother me. I started dressing differently, skirts instead of jeans, tops that dipped lower than usual. I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror, but I liked the way heads turned when I walked past. And Kendrick noticed, not right away. but enough. We were at a museum when I caught him looking. I wasn't even trying to get his attention then, I was just leaning over a glass display case. But when I glanced up, his eyes were already on me. He looked away too quickly, and something about that made me feel powerful. That night at the hotel bar, things shifted. I'd had a few drinks, enough to feel warm and a little reckless. Kendrick was sitting at the bar, surrounded by two older women who couldn't stop touching his arm and laughing too loudly. They were practically draped over him. I told myself I didn't care, but my stomach burned. Some guy had been buying me drinks, but I didn't even know his name. I just kept glancing at Kendrick, waiting for him to look my way. He didn't. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over, pulled Kendrick aside, and told him I was mad. I didn't even make sense. I just blurted out that he wasn't paying attention to me. He laughed at first, but then he got serious. He told me I looked good, said I'd been turning heads all night. I don't know what it was about hearing that from him, but it made my skin tingle. Before I could respond, the guy who'd been buying me drinks came over. He grabbed my arm and tried to pull me back to the bar. Kendrick didn't even hesitate. He stepped between us and told the guy to back off. The guy shoved Kendrick, and for a second I thought it was going to turn into something worse, but Kendrick stood his ground and eventually the guy backed off. I don't know what came over me after that. Maybe it was relief, or maybe it was the way Kendrick looked at me when it was just the two of us again. We went back to my room. I changed into pajamas, and before I could even think about what I was doing, Kendrick kissed me. I didn't stop him. It was slow at first, like we were both waiting for the other person to pull away, but no one did. It didn't feel wrong in that moment. It felt inevitable. We slept together twice. The next morning, we didn't talk about it. We went back to being cousins, back to sightseeing and pretending nothing had happened. But the air between us was different after that. Every look felt heavier. Every touch lasted a little longer than it should have. Then we went home and the secret stayed between us. Going home after that trip felt like stepping back into reality, but nothing about it felt real. Kendrick and I didn't talk about what happened in France. We didn't make any promises. We didn't even say it was a mistake. We just acted like it didn't happen, but it lingered. The first family gathering after the trip was the hardest. I remember walking into my aunt's house and seeing Kendrick across the room. He was laughing with his brother, completely at ease, like he hadn't been in my bed just weeks before. I kept telling myself to act normal, but my eyes wouldn't stop drifting to him. Every time he moved, I noticed. Every time he looked my way, I felt it. Then it started. Little things. He'd catch my eye from across the table and smirk like we shared some secret, or he'd walk past me, brushing my arm just enough to make my skin burn. At one point, he leaned in and whispered something about how different I looked, how grown up. I laughed it off, but inside, I couldn't breathe. The worst part? No one noticed. No one questioned why we seemed closer or why I couldn't look him in the eye for too long, and that made it worse. I started dating not long after. It wasn't serious, just a way to distract myself. I told myself I was moving on, that Kendrick was my cousin, and what happened was just a mistake. I even believed it sometimes. But then there'd be another family party, and he'd find a way to get me alone. Once I was helping set up food in the kitchen. Everyone else was outside, and Kendrick came in behind me. He stood too close, and I could feel the heat of his body. "You good?" he asked. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. Then he reached past me for a plate, brushing against my back like it was an accident. It wasn't. I didn't stop him. That's what kept me up at night. The fact that I let it happen, that even though we never crossed the line again, I let myself get pulled back into those moments where it felt like we might, but we didn't. Eventually, I told myself it didn't matter. I met someone, fell in love, or at least I thought I did. And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought that was it, that I was starting over and Kendrick would just be part of my past. But even then, he didn't fade completely. When I told him I was pregnant, he congratulated me, but his eyes said something else. I didn't ask what, and now, after everything, here I am. I'm back in Kendrick's apartment. It's been 4 years, but it doesn't feel that long. Some days it seems like no time has passed at all. Moving in with him felt like stepping into a storm I wasn't prepared for. The first night, I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed in his spare room, rocking my baby to sleep. I tried to ignore the fact that I was hyper-aware of Kendrick in the next room. His voice was faint through the wall as he talked to someone on the phone, his footsteps slow and heavy due to the limp he hadn't fully recovered from. I told myself this was temporary, a few months, maybe less, just enough time to get a job and save up for my own place. That's what I told him too, and he didn't argue. He just handed me the key and said, "Stay as long as you need." But being here brought everything back. I wasn't expecting him to be so good with my daughter. The first time he picked her up, she curled right into him like she'd known him forever. He joked about how she liked him more than me, and I laughed, but it hit me harder than I wanted to admit. He made it easy. Too easy. He helped with feedings when I needed a break, folded laundry without being asked, and always seemed to know when I was on the verge of breaking down. One night, after a long day of job hunting and rejection emails, I walked into the living room and found him on the couch with my baby asleep on his chest. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. He was just staring at her, his fingers lightly brushing her tiny hand. I froze for a second, letting myself picture the three of us as a family. Then I hated myself for thinking it because Kendrick wasn't hers, and he wasn't mine. The guilt ate at me, but it didn't stop the thoughts. Every time he touched my shoulder or brushed past me in the kitchen, it felt like my skin was on fire. And the way he looked at me sometimes, like he was remembering too, made it even harder. I kept telling myself he wasn't the same Kendrick I met in France. He wasn't the confident, carefree guy who made me feel like the only girl in the room. He'd been through a lot. The car accident happened a year before I moved in. Some drunk driver ran a red light and hit him head-on. Kendrick broke his shin and hip and had a concussion that messed him up for months. He still walked with a limp, and some days the pain slowed him down so much I could see the frustration in his eyes. But he never let it show for long. He joked about it, laughed off the limp, and insisted he didn't need help, even when it was clear he did. I think that's what scared me the most. Seeing him vulnerable made it harder to keep my guard up. One afternoon I came home to find him on the couch, trying and failing to lift a box of baby supplies I'd ordered. "Let me help," I said, reaching for it. "I got it," he grumbled, wincing as he shifted his weight. I crossed my arms. "Kendrick," I sighed, and he finally let go of the box. "Fine, but don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation to protect." I smiled, but it felt too easy, too natural. Later that night, after my baby fell asleep, I found myself sitting beside him on the couch. Neither of us said anything at first, and then he looked at me. "You're doing good, you know," he said softly, referring to my daughter and everything else. I wanted to believe him, but the way he said it, the way he looked at me when he did, made my chest tighten. I don't know if it was the exhaustion or the way his voice softened when he talked about my daughter. But in that moment, it felt like the walls I'd built around myself were crumbling, and that terrified me more than anything. The tension started creeping back in before I even noticed it. At first, it was subtle, little things. Kendrick would brush past me in the hallway, his hand barely grazing my lower back, and I'd feel it linger long after he was gone. Or he'd hold my baby and look up at me with this softness in his eyes that made my stomach twist. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just the exhaustion playing tricks on me. But then came the comments. "You're amazing with her," he said one night while watching me rock my baby to sleep. "Seriously, I don't know how you do it." His voice was low, almost like he didn't mean for me to hear it. I froze for a second before forcing a smile. "You get used to it," I replied, but he didn't drop it. "No, I mean it," he said. "You're stronger than you think." I wanted to brush it off, but I couldn't. His words stuck with me, circling my head long after he left the room. And that's when it started again, the jealousy. Kendrick wasn't exactly subtle when it came to women. He'd get texts late at night, and sometimes I'd catch him smiling at his phone. I hated how much it bothered me, especially when I had no right to feel that way. The first time I saw him leaving the apartment dressed up, it hit me harder than I expected. I tried to play it cool, asking where he was going without making it obvious that I cared. "Grabbing drinks," he said, slipping on his jacket. "I won't be late." I nodded and smiled, pretending not to notice the way he adjusted his collar in the mirror. But the moment the door closed behind him, I felt sick. I spent the next 2 hours pacing the apartment, checking my phone and trying to convince myself it didn't matter. But it did. When he came back, his shirt was a little wrinkled and his hair looked like someone had run their fingers through it. He didn't say much, just gave me a tired smile and asked if the baby had been good. I wanted to ask about the girl instead. I said, "Good night," and went to my room. But sleep didn't come easily that night. The tension kept building. It was in the way he looked at me, the way he touched me without thinking, adjusting a strand of hair that had fallen into my face, or brushing his hand against mine when he passed me something. Once he caught me staring at him. He didn't say anything, but his lips curled into a small smile before he looked away. That's when I knew this wasn't just me imagining things. It was real. The lines were blurring and I didn't know how to stop it. I kept reminding myself that Kendrick was family, that we had already crossed a line we shouldn't have, and it nearly broke me the first time. But then he'd look at me like that, like I was the only one in the room, and all those arguments I rehearsed in my head disappeared. I wanted him, and that scared me more than anything. It happened on a night when everything already felt too heavy. The baby had been crying for hours and nothing I did seemed to help. I paced the apartment, bouncing her in my arms until my back ached and my legs felt like they might give out. By the time Kendrick came home, my eyes were swollen from crying, and I didn't even care that I looked a mess. He took one look at me, didn't say a word, and reached out for the baby. "She probably just needs a change," he said calmly, as if my entire world wasn't unraveling. I handed her over without arguing and sank onto the couch. I didn't realize I was crying again until Kendrick sat down beside me, my daughter already asleep in his arms. "She's fine now," he said softly, but I wasn't. I broke down. Words poured out of me about my ex, how he walked away when things got hard, how I felt like I wasn't enough, like I'd already failed as a mom. Kendrick listened without interrupting. He just sat there holding my baby like it was the easiest thing in the world. When I finally stopped talking, he didn't try to fix it. He didn't tell me it would all be okay or that I was overthinking. Instead, he said, "You didn't deserve any of that." I looked at him, and the way he said it, the softness in his voice, made my throat tighten. He set the baby down in the bassinet, then turned back to me. "You're not alone, Brooklyn," he said. I wanted to believe him. And then it happened. It wasn't planned. One second we were sitting there, and the next, his hand was on my cheek, brushing away a tear I didn't even realize had fallen. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. When he kissed me, I let him. It wasn't soft or hesitant. It was desperate, like neither of us could stop, even if we wanted to. For a moment, it didn't feel wrong, but then it hit me. I pulled back, my breathing uneven, my heart pounding. "This is wrong," I whispered. Kendrick didn't move. "I know," he said, but his voice sounded strained, like he didn't believe it any more than I did. He reached for my hand, and I didn't stop him. I wanted to. I told myself I would, but when his fingers laced through mine, it felt too familiar, too safe to let go. And just like that, the walls I'd spent years building came crashing down. We didn't talk after that. Not about what it meant or what we were supposed to do now. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. His hands, his mouth, the way he looked at me when it was over. And the worst part? I wanted more. Even as the guilt sank in, twisting my stomach into knots, I wanted more. I woke up the next morning with a sinking feeling in my chest. Kendrick wasn't in the apartment. The baby was still asleep, but the room felt heavy, like it couldn't hold what happened the night before. My lips still tingled, my skin still burned where his hands had been, but my stomach churned. What the hell had I done? I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking. I kept replaying it. The kiss, the way we couldn't stop, the way I didn't want to stop. I told myself it was just the heat of the moment. I was emotional, vulnerable. He was comforting me and it got out of hand. That's all it was, right? But deep down, I knew better. When Kendrick came home later that morning, the tension hit immediately. He said, "Hey," like it was any other day, but I saw it in his eyes. He was nervous. I acted busy folding baby clothes, keeping my head down. Did she sleep okay? Yeah. Neither of us mentioned what had happened. The next few days were a blur. I threw myself into caring for the baby, feeding, cleaning, rocking her to sleep, anything to avoid Kendrick. He gave me space, but it didn't help. It made things worse. Every time we crossed paths, whether in the hallway or sitting across from each other in the living room, the tension, guilt, and desire were palpable. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and that scared me more than anything. I considered leaving, packing up and going anywhere else, but my parents' house was still out of the question, and I didn't have enough money saved for my own place. Plus, there was the baby. She needed stability and for me to keep it together. So I stayed. Staying meant watching Kendrick try to act normal even when I could tell he was struggling too. It also meant meeting Liana Rubio. She wasn't his girlfriend, not officially, but it was clear she wanted to be. She came over one evening, all long legs and perfect hair, carrying takeout and laughing at every joke Kendrick made. I hated her immediately, the way she leaned into him, the way he let her, but most of all, I hated how much it bothered me. She was too nice, asking about the baby, offering to help and complimenting my outfit. But the whole time her eyes kept flicking between me and Kendrick, like she was trying to figure something out. I knew she saw it, the way Kendrick tensed up when I walked into the room, the way he avoided looking at me when she was around. Later that night, after she left, Kendrick knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" I shook my head. "Not tonight." He hesitated, then nodded and walked away. I wanted to cry but held back, sitting in the dark, staring at my baby and wondering how I let things get this bad. It all came crashing down faster than I thought it would. Liana showed up unannounced one afternoon, all smiles and sugary sweetness. But her eyes told a different story. Kendrick wasn't home. It was just me and the baby. She stood at the door, holding a plastic bag filled with baby clothes. "I saw these and thought of her," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I forced a smile and took the bag. "That's really thoughtful." "Of course," she said, her eyes scanning the apartment. "I just wanted to check in, make sure you're okay." The way she said it made my stomach twist. "I'm fine." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You and Kendrick seem close." I froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" She tilted her head, her smile sharp now. "I'm not stupid, Brooklyn." And I opened my mouth to defend myself, but nothing came out. "Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but whatever it is, it's not fair. Not to me, not to your baby." The words hit like a slap. I wanted to scream at her, tell her she didn't know anything about me or my life, but the truth sat heavy in my chest because she wasn't wrong. She stepped closer. "You need to figure out what you want. But if you think I'm just going to sit back and let you ruin Kendrick's life, you're wrong." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. When she left, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I spent the rest of the day avoiding Kendrick, but by the time the baby fell asleep, I knew I couldn't keep running from this. I found him in the living room, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded and set his phone down. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then it all came out. I told him everything. How I couldn't stop thinking about France. How being here with him made it impossible to move on. How I hated myself for wanting him even when I knew it was wrong. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. Kendrick didn't look away. "I feel it too," he said quietly. Those 4 words knocked the air out of me. "But I don't know what to do," he admitted. "You're my cousin, Brooklyn. We're not supposed to feel this way." I sat down beside him, my heart pounding. "So, what now?" He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know." We sat there in silence, the weight of it all pressing down on us. "I can't lose you," I said finally. "You won't," he said, but his voice was strained. I wanted to believe him, but the truth was there wasn't an easy answer. We could keep pretending, acting like nothing happened, but that wouldn't make it go away. Or we could walk away completely, cut ties, even if it shattered me. Or we could do the unthinkable, be together, and risk everything. I sat awake that night staring at the ceiling while my baby slept soundly in the bassinet beside me. My mind kept replaying the conversation with Kendrick, his words, my words, the weight of it all felt unbearable. He felt it too. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. If anything, it made it worse because now I knew I wasn't crazy. It wasn't just me. But knowing didn't make it any easier. I thought about my daughter, the tiny person who needed me more than anyone ever had. She didn't ask for this mess. She didn't deserve to be dragged into my chaos. I couldn't keep doing this. The next morning, Kendrick was already in the kitchen when I walked in. He looked up, and for a second, we just stared at each other. I broke the silence first. I can't. He sat down his coffee mug. Can't what? This, my voice cracked. I can't keep pretending it's not there, but I also can't let it ruin everything. He didn't speak right away, and I hated the look on his face, the hurt mixed with something else, acceptance maybe. I get it, he said finally. I felt my chest tighten. Do you? He nodded. You're right. Your baby comes first. I swallowed hard, fighting the tears threatening to spill. And you? You need someone who isn't this. He didn't argue. He just stepped closer, resting his hand lightly on my arm. I'm still here, Brooklyn. I'm not going anywhere. His words were supposed to make me feel better, but they only made it harder. I stepped back, creating space between us, even though it hurt to do it. I need time to figure myself out, to figure out what this is. He didn't fight it, he just nodded, his jaw tight. For the next few weeks, we kept things surface level. He still helped with the baby, still checked on me, but the touches stopped, the lingering glances faded. We acted like nothing had ever happened. But some nights, after the baby was asleep, I'd find myself lying in bed, wondering if it was really over or if it was just paused. Because the truth was, Kendrick wasn't just my past, he was still in my present, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be ready to let him go completely. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this story. If it resonated with you or made you feel something, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more than you know. And if you think someone else might need to hear this, share it. Sometimes, stories like this can be the push someone needs to start healing. Also, don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories like this, real, raw, and honest. And I'd love for you to be here for the next one.